Hi, this is Carl. Welcome back to the Apparent Faith video series. This is an accompaniment to my book, Apparent Faith, What Fatherhood Taught Me About the Father's Heart. This episode is number 3. It's What God is Like. When my kids got in high school, they began to ask more challenging questions. There were kids from college and so on that were emailing me, and I got all these questions, but I kind of dismissed those questions. I knew how to dismiss those questions, but it was beginning to kind of build in me a questioning about some of my beliefs. Some of my views of God didn't really even match up with my parenting skills, my parenting beliefs. And it just kind of was this gnawing that God must be better than me, and God must be a good parent. Why do I have these views of God that don't really match up? One of those was reflected in my love for Christmas. I like to be the first one up on Christmas. It drives my wife crazy, Laura, that I get up too early, and I'm just excited to see the gifts and all that stuff. It's exciting for me. But that idea that rewards us for being good, it's an early reference point for God. And the Santa Claus God, he makes a list of who's naughty and nice, and he's keeping a record, he's keeping a list, and he's checking it twice. My mom would say, he's coming soon, and that was cue for you, so you better be good, for goodness sake. So that's one view of God. There's also the view that male-dominated authoritarian type of faith or God. I grew up with some of this, that God has little mercy for rule breakers, little tolerance for questions, and I heard vengeful sermons and sinners in the hands of an angry God, and God was angry. God was vengeful, like the Old Testament God. He had the face of wrath, kind of like Zeus in my mind with lightning bolts. But he must have, I assume, some kind of dual personality. He must be, grace, mercy, and love, but he also must be vengeful, anger, and retributive. And I wondered at times how those two could go together. So in Bible college, I got some evidence of this mercy, grace, and loving God. But I mostly used Bible college and seminary to validate the assumptions that I already had. There was more evidence of grace, mercy, and love, but to some degree I just was slightly confused and slightly needing to validate my own assumptions that I already had. So I knew there was loving my enemy, but I also saw genocide and slavery, and those two things just didn't go together. But I did wonder, why was this system so retributive? Why couldn't God just forgive without having to hurt someone or somebody? It seemed archaic. It began to seem illogical. It didn't make any sense. But I excused those things for the moment as I went on with my life, my career, my ministry. But at some point my kids stopped believing in Santa Claus. They would lean over to me and say, "Dad, Santa Claus isn't real." But I still wanted to believe in the Santa Claus God. If I was good enough, maybe, just maybe, he would approve of me. That model broke down with raising children. Because I had to withhold some things that they actually deserved sometimes. I also had to give them gifts that they didn't deserve. So it wasn't just who's been naughty or who's been nice. It's kind of like the rich kids get more toys anyway. It doesn't matter if they're good or not. And sometimes the poor kids didn't get as much. So even though I was even-tempered as I was growing up, as I was becoming a parent, I occasionally lost it. I occasionally got upset. I still remember the looks in my children, my wife's eyes when that would happen. But when I lost my temper, when I was vengeful, when I was retributive, that never accomplished anything noble. It even caused some damage. It never motivated them to be better. It only made them afraid of me and cause them to trust me a little less. So this began to chip away at my view of God. If God was like that, I wondered how effective he was. Because fear, retribution, and anger is really the worst disposition for a parent. I could get my children to do what I wanted, but it wasn't meaningful unless their hearts were changed. Fear, retribution, and anger are usually rooted in immaturity. And they may be effective. It may get some things done, but it's for the wrong reasons. And it could leave residual damage in those children. So I lost faith, I think. I began to lose faith in this type of God. I began to see God more like Jesus and the things I saw in the New Testament. So I would have discussions, though, with my children. I'd say, you did this thing. I should really take away all your stuff. But I'm choosing to give you another chance. By the way, I still love you. And I think this is more directly related to a Christ-like image of God. My son, in some of these instances, wasn't nice. He was naughty. But I wasn't Santa Claus or Zeus. I was his parent. I was his father. So what is God like? There is some verses, and I'm not using a lot of Bible verses in this course, but that say the Son is, the New Testament, the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation, the icon of his being. Jesus is exactly like God, and God is exactly like Jesus. Jesus said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. Jesus ignored the religious zealots of the time that their view of God is wrong, as he made statements like, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, Father, forgive them. His sermons, like the Sermon on the Mount, gave us guiding principles to understand who God is and how God feels about us. Jesus clearly demonstrates what God is like. At this point in my life, it's enough for me to say the writers of the Old Testament recorded what they remember in a way that made sense to them. I don't have to force the Bible to be an accurate history book. Raising children actually helped me understand what God is like. God is not Santa Claus. As we lose interest in the Santa Claus God when we don't get what we want, or when we get frustrated because we can't be good enough. Zeus is ineffective as a parent. If God is like Zeus, then he's ineffective as a parent. He may get us to do some things, but he'll never have our heart. But if God is like Jesus, then his mercy, love, and forgiveness can nurture a relationship that's fruitful. We can grow to be responsible humans who live productive, loving, and effective lives. See, now I have an understanding of God that makes more sense. Hey, join us next time. We're going to talk about the love of God, one of my favorite topics. See you next time.